The area under tension is well within our exclusive economic zone. And if we apply the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea strictly, China has no business policing the area, much less erecting any permanent structure in that area. We do not have direct Defense Ministry to Defense Department communications channels or military to military channels because we have not seen the value of opening such channels. And on the other hand, we have seen the abuse of our democratic processes and the freedom of movement that is guaranteed by the Philippines for China to abuse the privileges granted to its military personnel. We have seen a display of offensive capabilities, and there is no other way to put it that it is a signal, a strong threat, and a means of messaging to deter common cause for the preservation of democracy and freedom in the world. I cannot put it any other way. Thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister Anushka.
Well, I believe that for like-minded countries, the rules-based international order is the foundation of our relations. We approach our geopolitical obligations, our engagements under a framework of law, and with the implicit guarantee that we enter into these agreements in good faith, with the end in view of building institutions and frameworks. It is not perfect, but it seems to be the common way that we are able to discuss our differences, cooperate, and help others in need. There are challenges, naturally, for the simple reason that for like-minded countries, we are here because of the explicit consent of our constituencies. Our own people, each and every one, no matter how distant in terms of relative power, wealth, has a say, and that say is valuable. In other words, we have to contend with democratic institutions in our own countries, while, on the other hand, the emerging powers that were in China the other day do not need to contend with the voice of the people. They do not need to be accountable in the same way we are here. And this perhaps places us at a strategic disadvantage in pursuing shared international goals. It takes more time. However, at the end of the day, the calculus is what is the value each of us places to human life. History has proven that we value our citizens' lives, and we do not enter into both domestic and international experiments that will place them in harm's way, because at the end of the day, we'll be accountable. Unlike authoritarian regimes, which are non-accountable. And in this way, we have to call a spade a spade. We are not diplomats here. We are defense secretaries and defense practitioners. We have seen a display of offensive capabilities. And there is no other way to put it that it is a signal, a strong threat, and a means of messaging to deter common cause for the preservation of democracy and freedom in the world. I cannot put it any other way. Thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister Anushka. Tension in the region, what practical communication channels and the measures do you have with your allies and the security partners, and even with China?
Well, for the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea issue, there are communications channels through our Department of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We do not have direct Defense Ministry to Defense Department communications channels or military to military channels because we have not seen the value of opening such channels. And on the other hand, we have seen the abuse of our democratic processes and the freedom of movement that is guaranteed by the Philippines for China to abuse the privileges granted to its military personnel. And we also have to operate on a security environment where we have been seeing internal subversion by illegal Chinese aliens who penetrate critical infrastructure, communities, try to influence public opinion through sub rosa means. And in that end, we are also concerned about the risk of miscommunication and miscalculation, rather, in the area. However, let's boil down to basics. The area under tension is well within our exclusive economic zone. And if we apply the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea strictly, China has no business policing the area, much less erecting any permanent structure in that area. Secondly, we have resorted to peaceful means to settle the issue. The worst case that we can do as practitioners and leaders of today is to leave things hanging for the future generations. We know that the future generations will demand speedier answers, and their tolerance for diplomacy may be diminishing as time goes by because they will live in a faster world. So we did resort to a means recognized by UNCLOS. We resorted to arbitration, which China has refused. And yet, China continues to try to stall, as it has done several times with other countries, and try to have these modus vivendi arrangements which are non-permanent and supposed gentlemen's agreements which they use to distort the truth. And so the question should be asked to China, what are they doing? We have tried the path of cooperation, the path of negotiations, the path of even accommodation to no avail. And so where do we go from here? To me, my job as Defense Secretary is simple. It is to build a strong deterrent posture, both on our own and with allies, so that the diplomatic toolkit allows our political leadership to deal in a position of relative parity, with dignity and with honor, and without accommodating or appeasing a greater power, which only leads to more hunger on the part of that power. And also, if I may add to your previous question on the connection between what happens in Ukraine and in our area, there are several effects. First, obviously on supply chains, which is important particularly for net importers of energy and other vital commodities, or archipelagic countries like the Philippines and other countries which rely on international trade, such as Singapore. The tension in that area translates to actual higher prices, energy prices to our people, and it also closes emerging economies a potential venue for expanding wealth creation in our markets. Secondly, it also endangers the life of our migrant workers. Thirdly, it affords a living laboratory for actual testing of more lethal and insidious weaponry, which can be applied here. Third, it tests the limits of international humanitarian law, because even areas which are well known in international law as taboo, such as field hospitals, are now being targeted. Fourth, it weaponizes the contrivance of the use of history to a power's advantage. And the history that I claim maybe as a part of an empire or a part of a greater destiny or a reawakening is used also to weaponize and brainwash a populace to add legitimacy to an authoritarian regime. So it does not merely affect the target area, but also the continuation and perpetuation in power of a power center in that country. Another one is we have seen the initial subversion by an occupying power of a target population by penetrating its political systems, by buying influence, by generating alternative power sources within in order for public opinion to be formed to gaslight a country when it resists unlawful aggression. Finally, it is a test of the United Nations' capability and resolve to guarantee peace and security in the world, which is in a state of severe challenge. And these nations, the conflict in Ukraine, is a test for other power centers, perhaps China. Can I get away with this in Southeast Asia? Can I get away with this in Northeast Asia? Will the United Nations finally act as it did 75 years ago? So these are the dangers and the parallelisms that I see between the area bounded by the Ukraine conflict and us here. They are real and they are existing.